President Biden is gearing up for a major meeting with Pope Francis tomorrow as he makes his way through Europe. They're expected to discuss a wide range of issues from climate change to the pandemic. President Biden's Catholic faith has become a controversial flashpoint amid criticism from conservatives and bishops over his support for abortion rights. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the pair will focus on what they agree on rather than their differences.
There's a great deal of agreement and overlap with the president and Pope Francis on a range of issues: poverty, combating the climate crisis, ending the COVID-19 pandemic. These are all hugely important, impactful issues that will be the centerpiece of what their discussion is when they meet.
So for more on this, I want to bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay. Chris, as you've said, abortion rights is sort of the elephant in the room. When House Speaker Nancy Pelosi met with the Pope just a couple of weeks ago, the topic did not come up. Do we expect Pope Francis and President Biden to discuss abortion rights?
Hi, Anne-Marie. Frankly, no. It's very unlikely that the White House or the Vatican will want to devote any time to such an uncomfortable topic. Keep in mind that the Vatican doesn't have a military, it doesn't have economic influence, so it tends to shy away from confrontation. It's much more likely to focus on areas of convergence and commonality, areas where the White House and the Vatican see eye to eye. So on issues such as refugees and alleviating poverty, and especially when it comes to climate change. In just a few days, President Biden is on his way to Glasgow for an extremely important UN summit on climate change. So that's likely to be where all of the energy is concentrated.
As you know, President Biden is pretty open about his faith. He's Roman Catholic. He goes to Mass quite regularly. But it's also been a point of criticism from conservatives, from some conservatives within the Catholic faith, because he is a proponent of abortion rights. And some have said he should not be allowed to take communion or receive communion. Where does the Pope stand on this?
Yeah, so Joe Biden is the first Catholic president since John F. Kennedy, but his support of abortion rights is at odds with Catholic doctrine. So a lot of conservative bishops in the United States have argued that that should make him illegible for receiving communion. Pope Francis was actually asked about this on a recent papal flight where I was present, and he made it very clear that he is, of course, against abortion. He said he considers it to be murder, but he also emphasized that in his entire life as a pastor, he's never once denied communion to anybody. In fact, he thinks to do so is really just a misstep as a pastor, because at the end of the day, you know, communion isn't this reward for being perfect as he sees it. Rather, it's a salve for the sinner. So to require politicians or anyone to check certain boxes before they can receive communion is a mistake, according to Pope Francis.
So we've discussed the one issue that they are likely to avoid and some of what they'll talk about. Do you know what else will be on the agenda for them?
Well, it's very hard to ignore the personal and spiritual bond that these two men share. Pope Francis's picture hangs very prominently in the Oval Office. It was Pope Francis who comforted the Biden family when Joe Biden's son Beau died in 2015. Pope Francis had a private meeting with Joe Biden to discuss cancer research. You know, so these are two men who share not just a spiritual bond, but in many ways a world view. They're also men who came into immense power later on in their careers and in their lives. Joe Biden is in his late 70s, Pope Francis in his mid 80s. So it's hard to imagine some of these topics not coming up in their meeting.
I'm wondering if the White House sees this meeting as advantageous for the president and the president's own sort of domestic agenda. We know that he's actually leaving for Italy a little bit later than was expected because he's still sort of arguing with his own party members about pushing forward his social spending agenda. Is the White House and the president hoping that this kind of high-profile meeting between these influential men will actually be a bit of a boost for the president?
I'm sure that the White House and the Vatican both see this meeting as an opportunity. And it's worth looking back to, incidentally, the last time there was a Catholic president in the White House, when John F. Kennedy was president during the Cuban Missile Crisis and during the Cold War, which was the existential threat of the time. Not too unlike, some would say, today's existential threat of climate change. So back then, it was very helpful to the Kennedy administration just 6 months after the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the Pope at the time, John the 23rd, issued an encyclical in which he called basically on cooler heads to prevail. He called on leaders to negotiate and he called for peace. Just a week later, John F. Kennedy was able to cite that encyclical when he was making a very prominent speech calling on people to support his agenda to eliminate research on nuclear testing. And he was actually able to win domestic support for that policy. So while it's safe to say that the Vatican loathes wading directly into U.S. politics, it's not against bringing up areas of commonality. And if that were to happen with the Biden administration when it comes to climate change or any of the social spending, I mean, if it were to happen implicitly, not directly, I'm sure that's the kind of thing that the Biden administration would welcome.
Chris Livesay, thank you so much, Chris.